This is where we left from, and today we're going to learn about developing and getting to push your changes to the remote Git and GitHub. So remember that from the last lecture, of course. So we mentioned that if you want to store your changes, so for example, you are collaborating on an application, then you have to push your changes, and this was actually our first repository. So remember we created something here, so this was our first push. So I want you to create a new repository so that we can get started with now using the command line. So we'll be downloading two softwares, so that's the Git Bash and then the GitHub Desktop. But for GitHub Desktop, we're not going to study more about it, so because that's let's leave it for, I'm not going to say for those who don't know how to use a computer, but let's do things the professional way. So that's the command line way. So you're going, unless you really want to focus more on the GitHub Desktop, so you can just download. It's a graphical user interface, so that means that it's very easy for you to use because it's just a mouse drag and drop and just typing changes. So the first thing I want you to do is create a new repository. So remember from our first step, so head to new repository. So I already created one here. So that was a Git. So remember, do not, while you are creating a new repository, I would want us to focus with this command. So remember, do not add the README. So for example, when I'm trying to create a new repository, so say, let me say I've created that, and then I've just typed in a name, then some descriptions. So while I'm creating it, so make sure that the README file is not checked. So do not check this one. So make sure it's empty, so that when you create a new repository, so let's say I'm creating it, we'll be able to get this. So let's say, for example, you created a repository by mistake. So you can delete it by going to settings. So when you are on your settings, then you can scroll down until the danger zone. So when you are on your danger zone, you can see what's happening here. So it's actually a danger zone. So then you can see here, delete this repository. So you have to make sure that you have the exact name, because I really typed it like I will be able to remember. So let me just copy this one, copy the name. So now I'm going to scroll down to the delete repository. Then I'm going to paste it. Then make sure that it's being preceded by your GitHub username. So like Bakshi Owen /. So if you mistakenly type it, let's say I missed the last character, so it's not going to activate the delete button. So make sure you have actually like typed it correctly. So I can now proceed ahead and delete. So once I delete that, then I go back to maybe like my username. So maybe you're just on one of the repository and go back to my username. So that means the repository is no more. So just create one repository. So I just created mine called Git with Java. So remember, we were working with an application, not an application actually, but these few code. So remember, we made some changes, but that was we made the changes using actually the copy and paste. So if you can remember, this was our first repository, and we made the changes here. That was hello world, the Java. So this code is still this same code over here. And again, so back to our repository. So if you remember the way we were adding files, so I want you to know the difference. So we would just come here, add, create a new file. Then maybe let me just say java2.java. .java. Then maybe like, let's say I just actually like just printed in some values here. So let me just use that for example. So let me just assume that I copied it from this editor, then I'm pasting it here. So let's assume that I've pasted it. Then usually we'd just add some, what we were doing here, like maybe like updating the integer. Then you would all just commit the new changes. So this kind of process is a little bit boring. So if you now come into your Java, so you now see that your code is already updated. So, but this way of doing the changes is a little bit more boring, and it doesn't give you so much way of getting to interact with Git. So we are going to understand how we are going to push things using the command line. So if you have never used Linux before, don't worry. We're just going to do simple step by step. So don't worry about this repository. So we're just going to understand what this happened. So you can note that something was forked here. So we will actually come to understand shortly what this means. So don't worry. Of course, this full Python course is not in your repository because you just created this one. You only had one repository, and then now you have this one. So we'll get to understand how this repository found itself inside here. So the first thing I want you to do is head to git bash desktop. So that's for Windows. So there's the versions for me, but for Linux and Mac. So I don't think you need this because you only have to install Git using your command line. So this is for the Windows people. So once you have this, so you can just download it. Because I already have the software, I'm not going to download it. I just head to where I stored my download. And then the next thing I want you to do is I want you to download GitHub desktop. So if you type in GitHub desktop, so this will actually take you to this repository here, desktop.github.com. So for Windows, the good thing is it automatically detects your operating system. That means if you are running a 32-bit, then it will recommend for 32-bit. But if you are running a 64-bit version, so it's going to recommend the 64-bit version. So just click on download and then wait for the download to complete. So because I already have it, I'm not going to download it. So this is how actually the interface works like. So from this place, you're going to have your repositories. So like the history is the changes. So you can see here, you can go to file, then you can add new repositories. So yeah, it's actually a little bit more of simple, but I want you to do things the professional way. So maybe we do another course on this, the GitHub desktop, maybe like just add it up later after the advanced Git and GitHub course. So for example, once you have done downloading this, then I want you to go into your directory. So for me, I've already stored this one. So I have Git here, then I have GitHub. So let's first finish with installing GitHub. Then it's going to open this window here, the installation window and setup. So you can see the process has already completed. So once you already it launches, so because I'd already had some repositories working here, so it's just going to give you this this window. So from this place you can go to file, then new repository. So for your case, this place would be empty if you are starting it a new repository. So you can just go to file, new repository, you can go to edit. So this, you can see now that we have pull option in command prompt. We'll get to understand what all this works, but I just wanted to make sure you have it so that the next time you're going to do a course on this, it's gonna be a little bit easier. So I'm just going to close that, head back to where we need to focus on. That's the git and git bash. So make sure you double click, then allow your computer to make the changes. So of course, these are the make sure you read these terms. So I know most of us really don't read the terms and conditions for softwares. Just click on next after you've already read the terms and conditions. So by default, I would recommend that you just keep everything simple for now, everything to remain at default. So just keep clicking on next and until you reach the install process, and then you install. So once you install that, because I already again have the setup installed, I'm just going to quit. So the next thing I want you to do is make sure again you have the Visual Studio Code. So if you don't have the VS Code, you can go back to maybe the Python course or the Java course, whereby you get installation about, you get to understand how you install the Visual Studio Code. So for me, I'm going to use the VS Code. So you can use maybe the DevC, the IntelliJ, the PyCharm, Android Studio, or any other of your software that you want to push your remote changes. So I'm going to link the download, the link for the course just in the descriptions here, link below. So go back to this place. So we add this git files here. So for us to again now start pushing changes to our remote repository. So because we are already like created a Git repository. So I want you to go back into the directory you had saved your file. So if you navigate back now to where you had created your file, the initial file, so you'll find a .git, the .git file extension. So make sure you delete it. So it's usually like, so because or you can just leave it, so that you can just reinitialize it. But for me, I'd prefer to delete it. But if you don't, if depends again with your choices, so you can just maybe like leave it there anyway. So that was just because you find that once you had already initialized it, then it's going to be a reinitializing process, but it's fine. So you can just leave it. If it brings up some errors, just leave it. So once we are there, so I want you to open now your Git and GitHub. So open your Git bash. So once I have my Git bash up and running, there's something I want us to do. I want us to set our GitHub username and our GitHub name. So the first thing I want you to do is we are going to say git. Then I want you to type in config, then two hyphen, then global, then global. So then I want you to type user.name. Make sure your name reflects what your GitHub username is. So for me, I'll have to type exactly as it appears. That is bash on. So head back into your Git bash here. So then I'll just type in my name. So make sure you type in your name. Don't type my name. So git bash Owen. Then press on enter. So once this is already done, so I want us to configure now our user email. So make sure you have you place the right email that you used to sign up for your Git and GitHub. For actually your GitHub repositories, your GitHub account. So I'm going to just use the upward key. That's the upward arrow key to help me easily go back into, instead of retyping these commands. So I'm just going to type in email. So I remember my email hopefully, yes, teamsowen1130 at gmail.com. So once I have this up and running, then I can just press enter. So we are already done with these configurations. So from that point, we can actually like start pushing changes now to our repository using this Git tool. But I want us to use the terminal. Then we are going now to use this the window here for Git bash. So I want you to minimize here. So I want us to go the terminal editor way. So go into your editor, your IDE. So for me, I want to push these changes into this repository here. That is Git. So I want you to click on the repository that you created. So that's so for me that was the repository was Git name of this. So we now have this command. So you can now see that it says the command line. And I want you to note something here. So within our repository, we don't have any files. But once we do the pushing here at the last part, then we are going to observe the changes. So like logically what we'd have actually done is just going to, like the traditional way was going into creating a new file, like just we did, then do the same things. So but we are not going to do that now. So I want us to initialize. So go to because my window is really too large, so it's minimizing some icons. So I'm going to open a new terminal. So once you are now on your terminal, I'm going to say we are going to initialize a Git. So I'm going just to navigate to my directory. So if you're on your directory, don't worry. So just see this changing directory. So I can list the files that are here using the ls. So don't worry. So these are not the Git commands. So I'm just trying to navigate to where my files are, my exact file is. So I go to cd java. Then then now I'm on my files. So okay, cool. So let me try to clear this. Interesting. Okay, fine. So this is where we are starting our processes from. So don't worry about the change directory and the list files here. So I want you to type in git init. So with git init, so you will see a command here that initialized an empty repository. So this is basically from our first command here that we are initializing. So we are actually trying to configure. So we are telling our terminal that we want to use git commands inside our files. So once we have that, so I'm just going to skip this one. So we are going to add this later on. So I'm just going to skip that. Then I'm going to do this for the second command. So that's a git commit minus the m, then first commit. So this is the message you are actually telling maybe your other fellow developers, like, these are the changes that I made. So I want you to observe this. So remember that when we were creating the files, so I'm just going to open in a new tab so that we don't actually like get to mix things up. So remember in our hello world Java, so before we made changes here, so for example, let me say, just make some changes here. So to make some changes here, so there's this pencil here. So let me just go, okay, so we just go the bright way. So once I click on this, click on the pencil, it allows you to edit this. So for example, let me say, let me just say I want just int a equals to 40. So I want to tell my developers that, hey developers, I made some changes to the code. So that changes, I'm going to write those changes here. So maybe like, of course you don't have to type hey, so just like, hey, updated my integer version, my integer number. And then I would go for commit changes. So this M is the message, the commit message that you want to tell your fellow developers the changes you made. So then I would of course propose the changes by doing commit changes. So you now see that my code is already updated. So back in our terminal, so from this place, so I want you to type in git commit. So before we type in the git commit, there's this here, git add. So this means we want to add a file called readme.md. So remember this, remember the files. So just going back here to the hello world. So remember this readme file here. So it was just listed here the same way this is listed here. But once you add it here, then it directly goes below your all files to tell other people what this all chunk of code means. So that means you just the readme is just a description of what your code or what your repository does. So back into this, so we are going to skip this for a moment. So but instead we are going to add all files, and to add all the files here, so go back into your terminal and type in git add, and then make sure you have a space and then a period here. That's a full stop in short. So this means we are going to add all files, and then click or not click but press on enter. So once you press on enter, that means our files are now like all added. And now to see the difference, there's something called git status. So I want you to type in git status. So if you now type in git status, it's in color green. This means that these are the files that have been staged. So it's just like you're going into a restaurant, and then you have been served with the dishes, but there's no food. So, but before you go into maybe a restaurant, then before you are served with the dishes without food, that means that you've already there and you have not ordered anything. So this means that we have maybe like in a restaurant we have ordered but we have not paid for. So that paying for is just like pushing the changes. So assuming that we now add some code here. So let's say we are in our editor. So let's say, so let me just minimize this terminal shortly. So let's say now I wanted to add an integer like the other one. So int a equal to 50. Now, if I go back to my terminal and type in git status again, you see now that it says modified my file. And that means I've not maybe like staged the changes. So staging is just like notifying your compiler that, hey, I am aware that for the changes I've made. So to do that, you're going to say again git add all. And then to check that everything is fine, so you go git status. So you see now that everything is green. This means you are now ready to go to your next command. So this means that everything has been staged, or everything, you're already aware of the changes you've made. So the next command here says that we now give a commit message. So before we now like push it to remote repository, our GitHub, so go into So now we're going to say git commit. Then the commit message here is, let me say, just added an integer. But I'm going to close it. So make sure it appears in between the double quotes, the opening and closing double quotes. So and then make sure you have this hyphen. Otherwise, it's going to open in another editor where you're going to type in your commands, so which is kind of boring. So just make sure that you always have this. But for more details, so we're going to cover it up in our advanced course. That's an advanced course in Git. So for now, just make sure that you have it, so to make things simple, because we don't want to open other terminals and other editors. So our next command, so just press enter. So you are now going to see that two files change, 6 insertions, then the create mode. These are just the files you modified. So once you receive this message, that means you are now good to go. Now, the next command is now this. So I'm just going to skip this one for now. Don't mind so much about that. So the next command is adding this into a remote repository. So I want you to note something here. This command is just this link up here. So we are telling the editor, the IDE, our VS Code, that, hey, I want you to push these files into this repository. And this repository, remember, is this Git with Java. So I want you to copy this, but I don't always like copying. So just copy up to the link here. So right click and copy. So then git remote add origin. So you are specifying to your compiler exactly where you want your changes to be made. So go into your editor again. So I'm just going to again minimize my window this way and then pull it up again so that we now have it with the little the changes here. So I'm going to say git remote add origin, then a space, then you can just right click or Control V to paste. So if I now do that, I'm telling now my compiler, hey, make these changes to my Git account, and to that Git account is make it to the repository named Git with Java. So the next thing I want you to do is I want you to use this one now, but it's not the main. For now, let's use the master. So if you now go into your repository, so let's say the repository that we already created here, maybe this. So we have these. So it used to be master, but now it's main. So I want us first to understand. So we can just use the main. So this is the branch. So this is the main. So the main thing. So just know that we are going to use this one. So the main branch is this one repository here. This one repository. Just know for now. Just understand that this is where the master branches appears. So it's just like branches is just like supermarket. So maybe, for example, there's a Uchumi supermarket in Kenya, or maybe Chachki supermarket in Kenya. So there will be a branch in Nairobi, Nakuru, Mombasa. But when you make some imports, maybe like to the master branch, maybe Nairobi, so the goods will be delivered to the master branch in Nairobi. But if you need to the changes to the goods to be delivered in other branches, like maybe a branch in Kisumu, then you would specify like, now deliver the goods to the Kisumu branch. So of course, because we only have now one branch, we are not going to say to maybe like any other branch, like maybe like the developer branch. So but we are now going to say deliver this code into the master branch, which is actually the hello world. It's actually this Git with Java. So go into your editor again, type in git push manage origin main. So once you do now the git push manage then origin master, then this window here is will pop up. So unless you had already connected your GitHub with your editor, so but this window will now appear. So because remember, personal access token is always private, so make sure that no one has access to it. So but because I'm just using a demo account, so this is not my official GitHub account, so I'm going to delete it after this course. So make sure you go into your, so you can choose this option here. The option that's giving us here is you can either sign in with your browser, but I want to show you the most simple way. So just head into browser, then go into the settings. So inside your settings, I want you to go into the developer setting. So inside the developer setting, there's this personal access token. So you can now see that it has the personal access token. So it's being matched here. So remember, again, it's very private. So make sure that nobody sees it. So then you can now go into generate new token. Then it's going to tell you what you are going to use. So I'm just going to say I'm generating the token for VS Code. Then I'm going to click on generate. Then I'm going to copy it. So make sure, again, it's very, very, very private, that nobody sees it. Then I'm going to add back into my editor and paste it in there. Then I'm going to sign in. So go into sign in with your browser. So then it's going to take you to your browser where you're going to complete in your authentication. So into my browser now, it requires that I have this to allow Git to access my VS Code and Git credentials to be accessed by the GitHub Application Manager. So you just allow Git authorize. So once it's been authorized, then it's now going to throw in something. So you're going to see that there's enumeration objects, then counting. So you're going to see some bunch of things here. So once you head back into maybe your work here, and then again you go back now into your profile, and then remember we were let me just go back again a little bit there. So now, if you now observe the repository we were creating, Git with Java, if you now click, then you see that all those other things have already gone. Then we now have these two files. So if I now click, that was an empty file. The Java one, you now see that we have these changes here. The changes we made, then everything is now up to that point. Now, so now see that there's something here now, add README. So you can manually add it from here or add it from the command line. So, but I want us to add now everything to the command line because we had already done this on actually from the other repository. So we had done this manually. So I want you to go into your editor. So back here, and then I bring it here. So now we have this file here. So to add a README file, so I want you to go into your file where your code actually exists. Then I want you to create a new file. So then save it, maybe go save it still under that. So save it as a readme.md. So make sure you're on your right directory. So just going to type in readme, then make sure it's the .md the markdown. So if you now see these extensions, so go search for markdown. It's here. So if you now choose the extension with markdown, don't again place here .md. So you can just use to directly type in .md or just type in. So make sure it's readme. Then choose the markdown here. Then click on save. Okay, did I do it right? So I have my file. So let me just confirm if it's created. No, it didn't save. So file save as. Then I'm just going to type in readme. So I'm just going to say my file. I'm going to rename it to readme.md. So then I'm going to save it. So if I now do that, I can now maybe now explain to my users what I'm doing. So to maybe just put a title. So maybe like in HTML, we have H1, H2 up to H6. So these in H1, so H2, H3. So it's just like the font size. So I'm going to say this. So let me just say this is my first, let's say README description. So once I have that, I can now come back into my terminal. So I want you to type git status to check the changes you've made. So git status. So you see that now they are untracked files. So these are the files that your editor is your Git is not aware of. So to let Git be aware of, so you just type in git add. So you can just choose to say readme.md. That is if I am only adding one specific file. So I can just do that. But if I'm adding several files, so let's say I've created so many other files, then it would appear as readme, then the other one was admin, then I'll just use git add all. But for this case, we just want to add this one file. So we're going to do the commit changes again. Then we're going to say maybe like added readme file. So press enter. So you now see that there's one file changed and there's one insertion. So to do this, to push the changes to Git, then I'm just going to say git push means you origin master. So I want you to notice one thing here. So I've not done the git remote add origin because you only do it once. So once you type in, then you're going to see these confirmations that's 5 of 5 done or 100% done. So this means that the changes you've made here have been reflected on your GitHub. So you can just check again git status to make sure that there are no red files. So you can now see that on branch master and your branch is up to date. Now if you go to your file here, then try to refresh your browser. Then you see now that there is a readme.md file. So this is my first readme description. Now, there is one more thing I want us to understand before we finish it there for the maybe like the intermediate. I'm just going to call it small intermediate because the next thing we are going to do is we are going to perform merging, pull requests and all others in maybe like our advanced course. So I want you to observe something here. So there's this file here. Instead of me adding this directly, I can pull. There's something we call pull, git pull. So once I pull, that means that I take all these files that are online and make sure that it's accessible in my editor. So let me just close that. So I want you to observe that we only have one readme here and it's a file that we added here. So if I want to have this file here, so let me just try to add a readme manually like we added it. So I'm going to add a readme shortly just here. So maybe like using git to push that on Windows. So I'm not going to make it. So let me just reduce the font size here with the adding 2 more /. Then I'm going to say updated the readme. Then I just commit this new file. So it says that there is already a file existing with the same name. So let me just delete the other one because mostly readmes would just come below here. So I'm going to go into this direct file, then I'm going to delete this directory. So once I've deleted it, then I can now go back into my Java. So I forgot to commit the changes. So go back into your file, add into the delete repository, the directory, then commit changes. So maybe like, so make sure you have you give descriptive words here. So maybe like deleted readme. Then just commit the changes. So commit the changes means that you're finally done and the changes should be effective. So I want you to note here, so we had our readme here, but when you go into these other files, we all have our readme just below here to describe, so that nobody doesn't, because nobody would want to go into these details. So somebody would just want to check down your files that, hey, this is a hello world Java program, then it's just the person saying it is his first repository. So already a person has an idea of what's happening on these several files here. So I wanted to add a readme file here. So once you have that, then maybe like, let's say added new readme. Then I'm going to scroll down into this the commit new file here. So the changes is updated readme. Then I'm going to commit to the new file. So once I commit it to the new file, you now see that we have a readme down here. So git with Java using this. But now, if you go into your editor, so maybe let's say we are under our readme here. So remember that we already deleted this directory, so maybe like this file no longer exists in Git. So if you now go into our terminal, so terminal, new terminal, oops, I have to navigate back to my directory again, so just a minute, cd into my Java. Yeah, so once I now do like git status, you now see that there was modification in README. So it's telling me that an update was made and these changes to this file. So let me just say now, like, let me just git add everything and then try to commit. Let me just type in a simple message here, changes. Then if I now try to add git to push now the changes, git push origin master. Let's see what would happen. Boom, there comes something interesting here. Rejected the master, failed to push. So because it says that updates were rejected because the remote contains work that you do not have locally. So remember that we removed in our Git, we removed that file, the README file. So to make sure that we have all that changes, then Git is proposing us to do a Git pull. So pulling means that we are absorbing all the files into our editor. So to do that, we're just going to say git pull. So if you do the git pull, so it's going to throw in some commands here, so enumerating and all these other things. So it now gives me the entire changes. Now, if I do the git push now to the master, then let's see what will happen. Then its remote counter integrated changes because your branch is behind. So we can now go directly again to add. So git add, then git commit. Maybe like, let's say pulled changes. Then we can now push into our master. So if we now push into our master, we are now we see now that we don't have an error. So because we are now adding back the files that we are deleted. So if you now refresh, let's see what will happen. If you now refresh on our Git, so you see now that we now have our files. So remember, we deleted it on this online repository, but the file was still in our editor. So going back here, so you now note that there's this this describes so we come to understand what all these keys are. So and then you see now that we have Git with Java, and then we have everything. So we can now say that if you want to add a file here, so maybe I'm collaborating with another developer, then I can now add a file and then pull the changes. So we call that making a pull request. So let's understand one more thing before we finish somewhere there. So now, assuming I'm collaborating with another developer called Teams Owen, and then I am here now as Bakshi Owen. So I want you to now understand how these things happen to here. So let's just do a quick recap first. So to make sure that you've understood this, so I want you to give these the commands in your file. So I want you to open your file there. So we have this readme here. So we made these changes Java plan. So I'm going to just open my files just some little while. So git. Then I'm just going to my readme. Then I'm going to scroll a little bit down to my readme file. So I'm going to place these commands here. So this is just a file directory. So I'm in my directory and I'm under the readme file. So this readme file here. So if you go into your project, I'm under this file here. So you see now that we have Git with Java, Git push on Windows. So this is what is being reflected here. So assuming that I want to make some changes, so I want to just keep you updated. So the first thing I want you to do, remember that to initialize a repository, step number 1 is you have to do git init. Step number 2, you have to do a git add. You can either add all, or you can directly just, so let me just give some spacing here, or you can just directly add a file. So git add maybe like readme.md, or git add maybe like registration dot maybe Java. I have a registration.java file. I only want to add this and I don't want to add other files. So step number 3 is now committing the changes, telling a developer what to really made the changes. So maybe like your message here, your message on changes. So I'm just going to, sorry for that, some typo, changes. So once you've already told, there's something called the once you have already told. So you can now like go into, after this command, you can now add it if it's a new repository. So let me specify here a new repo. You now do git add remote origin, then your URL. So don't put it in quotes. So for example, my URL is maybe like https, then maybe github.com, maybe like Owen, then the Java repository. So this is just maybe your URL. So I'm just going to call this one URL. So that's if it's a new repository. But if it's not a new repository, maybe not new repository, and then you use the git directly push to your origin master. That's if it's not a new repo. But if now it's a new repository, then you're going to omit this one. So you just, after the commit, then you put the changes. But if it's a new repository, then you have to go git add remote origin. And then if you now come to step number 5, so only if it's a new repository, so once you are from this git add remote origin, then you can now come and do here git push. So remember, it's all small, git push origin master. So that's all you had to do. So now let's make these changes again. So I'm just going to close my directory here. So, and then pull up my terminal. Where's my terminal? Okay. So I think where's my terminal now? Interesting. Oh, it's here. New terminal. So if I now do git status to check the changes I've made, then you see now that there were some modifications in these files. So track changes, modifications. No, so let me just navigate back again. Sorry for that. Full course cd Java. So if I now do a git status on my file, so what I'm just trying to do is I'm just trying to navigate to my file. So you see now that I modified the README file. So I'm going to say git add, because I only had one file, so I'm just going to say add all, or I can just say git add the README. So then I'm going to say git commit, then updated the steps. So once that is done, then I can now do git push as your origin master. So if now I make this, then it's saying that origin does not appear to be a git remote. Make sure you have the right access. Oh, sorry. Origin. So we mistyped that command. So once you do that, then it's going to cross-check that everything is fine. Now, if you go back into your editor and try to refresh, if I now refresh, then I now see that it has already updated the README with these files. So first step, second step. So now this is our entire repository. So that was all you had to do. Now, one more thing before we go into before we understand how this repository, the full for the full course found itself here. So I want to remember we installed this and we have not even used it. So let's say into our file, let's say I want to directly make the changes. Instead of me using the terminal here, I want to make the changes using my Git bash. So if you now right click on this for Windows, if you now right click on make sure you are on your right directory. If you now right click, then you can now see that you have a Git bash here. So select the Git bash here. Then with that, it's going to take you to your current directory. So if you now do git status, it's just like the same way you are performing everything in your terminal. So for example, let's do one simple modification. So let's say we now say course complete, and we don't want to do the changes on the terminal here. So I can now go back into my Git bash here. So remember, I'm in my files. Then make sure you're on the right file. So if I now do git status, we now see that we have untracked changes here. So let me just maximize it here. So let me try. I don't know if this one will work. Yes, it's working. So if I now do again git status, you see that I have these unmodified untracked changes. So let me just inform my Git that these changes are I'm aware of. So I'm just going to say git add all. So you see now the commands are just works pretty same. Like the way it would work on a terminal, then it would just directly work on your git bash. So I'm going to say git add, and then I'm going to say git commit, then the message here, and then maybe like lesson complete. So this is just a random message. So if I do that, then it's going to tell me what of really the changes I've done. So to push my changes, I'm just going to say git push, then origin master. Now if I do that, then it's going to do the changes. So you now see that enumerating, then you can now you just make sure that it's 100% complete. Then if you now go back into your course, then refresh your browser. So you now see that we have this comment here, course complete. So you can either choose to do it on the git bash, or you can either choose to do it on terminal. So that was all you had to do about to understand about the git. So one last thing, we made some changes. So I don't know what this happened. So let's say you are lazy and you are getting it to work, and there's already an existing repository. So instead of going things from scratch, then you're going to, maybe let's say I'm collaborating with Themes ON. So remember, this is a repository that was on Teams, but now it's here with let me just turn this one off. So it's here with or in repositories Bakshi Owen, where I can now like edit and perform. So if I now click on this, now see that we have all these files. And then if I now click on this one again for Teams ON, if I now click on this, you see that everything is the same. So with this table, then for Bakshi ON again, it does the same things. So let's say Bakshi ON, then we have Teams ON. So let's say Teams ON is a remote developer, maybe it's a company in Nigeria, and then we are working on this global medicine application. Then I would just want to have this. So I want to have this app where Owen is working on this Kotlin application, and I don't want to do things from scratch. So there's something called fork here, and to fork means having the entire files in your repository, and then you can now start making your own changes and proposing changes. So we'll come to understand what pull requests are and merging and all other things. So to do that, you now go into your file, then you search maybe for global med. So I'm just going to maybe like do a random search here, like maybe say like global med Teams ON GitHub. So if I now choose this, then I can now choose maybe like the GitHub account for Teams ON. Remember, I'm in my own account as Bakshi Owen from Kenya. So I'm going to directly click on his repository. Then you see that if I click on maybe a file, maybe like README, then you see that now I'm having this. So if I now click on sorry, the global med. So I can now come to the global med and then click on fork. So if I now click on fork, then it's going to directly fork into my GitHub account. So it's going to get all the files. So if I now go back into my Backshare account and then go into my directly into my profile, you now see that I have this application. So it says it's forked. So from this point, I can now start making changes. So I can now start editing files and all this. So I can maybe like now edit my README. So I can now say this is Bakshi Owen. So then I can now do some commits. So let me just say like global med. Then I can now make the changes here. So if I now click on if I now make my own changes, you see now that this is Bakshi. And then if you now click on the global med so now I'm Teams on, so I'm not Bakshi now. So I'm in my own application. So if I refresh, you see that there's no changes already. So because this is Owen is working on his own application, and then Bakshi is working on his own application. We already made some changes here. So for me to make sure that I'm aligned into what Bakshi Owen, what Teams Owen made the changes, so I can go into a pull request. So if you now click on this pull request, I'm going to create a new pull request. So pull request is you want to propose changes to GitHub account for Teams Owen. So you see now that I added this file, then I want to make changes to Teams Owen. So if I now create a pull request, then I'm going to tell just create README something on that. So I'm just going to leave it as default. If you now click a pull request, create pull request, then this will now be sent to Teams Owen that hey, Bakshi is trying to make he saw an error in your app and he's trying to make the changes. So everything is fine. So there's no maybe like, let me just tell Teams I fixed your code. Although I didn't do anything. So if I now comment it, then Teams on the other hand will be able to see it. So if now I'm Teams, then I try refreshing here. You see now that if you now head into pull request, that's in Teams now in Nigeria. So if you now click here, then it sees somebody tried to make some changes, and he's saying that he updated the README. So if I now click on this, then you see now there's a global med update with that same message. So what I'll now do as Teams, so let's say we are collaborating with Bakshi. Then what I can now do, I can just come into the pull request that he made. Then I closely observe that everything is working really fine. So if it's really working fine, then I'm going to accept the changes. So I'm going directly to the file that I made the changes. Then I'm going to say just check the comment. So it says Bakshi says Teams I fixed your code. Then I can now like see the changes that he made. He just added in some comment, which is not actually like fixing a code. Then I'm going to say maybe like, yeah, so the changes works very well. So if I now merge, then I can now say like, well, changes accepted. Then so I'm just going to confirm merging. So merging means now the changes are now accepted. So if I now comment, then sorry for that, there's an alarm to remind me of something that I'm almost late. So if I now go back into my now file as now Teams Owen, you see now that this is Bakshi. And then if I now go back into if I now go back as Bakshi Owen, sorry, as Bakshi Owen, so home. So I made just let me just refresh this as Bakshi Owen. So if I now go back into my global med, you now see that my changes are there. The pull request is no more there. So the pull request has already been closed. Wow, so that was a lot to learn, and I really hope that you really enjoyed, and thank you so much for again paying attention and staying tuned in the Git. So the next upcoming lesson will now be the advanced Git. So you see now that you are able to understand the use of command line, so using the Git and then using the terminal and also understanding how other repositories work. So you can try maybe play around with these. Make sure that you master Git and version control so that on our next level, we'll be dealing now with advanced stuff. So thank you, and make sure you enjoy writing code. And of course, make sure you subscribe and share and like. And I'll see you in the next advanced version control systems.